Alright, so you've either got your line made up from a coiled roll, like I just showed in there, making your own flares and stuff and putting the retaining nuts on, or you've purchased this as an assembled line already. Basically, this is the state you'll be in. You'll either have a straight line, you've already had the flares on, and then you've bent it, or you'll have your coil that you've made your own flares and then you've formed it. So this one's all formed, and you can tweak these after you get them on. Main thing I want to focus on here is that if you're running this through a channel or something, like this is real easy because everything's open. If you're running this through a channel, let's say you got a nice long straight shot, you definitely don't want to get any crud or anything in the end of this. Let's say you run it down a frame rail or something. What I usually do is hold this nut all the way up to the end, take some electrical tape, wrap it around the entire thing, wrap it around the end of the hole and everything. That'll hold your nut in place, and it'll also hold or keep any crud and dirt from getting down inside the line as you feed it through, and then you can just peel it off. So when you're running these lines in, you want to make sure you're getting them started by hand. Do not start these things with a wrench like any fastener, but these are fine thread. Next thing, get yourself a good set of line wrenches. Some of the cheap ones are real big and bulbous looking. They don't fit in areas real well and stuff, so you want something that are nicely shaped and they're not real bulky and stuff. Alright. And then obviously they come in either standard, like this one's 3/8 and it's got 7/16 on the other end. Usually they're two different sizes on either end. And then you got metric ones. This one's a standard. So main thing about these, you can use regular wrenches on these, mainly if you've got them loose already and you're just getting most of the threads worked up. But if you're breaking these loose or you're tightening them, best thing to do to not damage the nut and get the full force on it is have these line wrenches, because you got majority of the sides covered with the actual tool. Alright, so it allows you to slip over the line, and it allows you to turn the whole thing and make the most contact on the fastener itself. Alright, so when I'm putting these in, I usually leave the line loose, get it snug or get it started on one side, and then I move over to my other side. So like this one here, it's up against the wheel cylinder, and I'll go ahead and get this started in here. I've got that started. I've got my line in my retainer already, and I'll bend that tab back when I get it on there. Basically, at this point, you know you got both your ends in. You want to go ahead and do your final adjustments on how the line's fitting in all the locations and stuff, and then go ahead and snug both of those up. Now, you're not cranking on these. You're not getting all the threads completely sunk down in there, because these nuts actually don't do any of the sealing work. The sealing work all comes from the flare itself. So if there we go. All comes from the flare. Alright? This one looks a little wonky, but just for demonstration purposes, we're doing this one. Okay, we're just getting them nice and snug. And then once we go to start bleeding these things out, if we notice we're getting air or anything in there, you can check these fittings and stuff and locations. If you are, you can get them snugged up a little bit. That'll seat that flare in there. A lot of times the block or whatever you're going into is harder than what this line is anyway, and it should seat and seal up there, so you can tighten it as you go at that point to try and get it sealed up. If it doesn't seal up, like I made this one, I left this one for an example here. See how that one side of the flare is actually kind of deformed and thicker on one side than the other. So this line, usually I make them like an inch or two longer than what the old line was. That way if you end up running into an issue like this, you're able to cut that off like you did the line to start with, re-flare this, and you shouldn't have a problem with buying lines that are already pretty formed and stuff, or pretty flared. But if you look at this, it's kind of crooked in there. This one I'm going to go ahead and take and cut this off with my tubing cutter. I'll straighten this line out a little bit so I can get this fitting back there a little further. Cut that off, re-flare it, and then go ahead and reset it, because if you look, that's not a good seat there. All right, get these snugged on here, get both of them on, and then once you get everything tight, you can start the bleeding process and stuff, getting these lines back out.